It's Friday. If you're working for the weekend, you are almost there. But first take, Max Kellerman. How are we doing?
Molly, how are you?
I am fantastic. Stephen A. Smith, looking dapper.
Black tie.
There in black and white. How we doing, my friend?
What's going on, y'all? How y'all doing? You like the look, Max? You like the look?
You look like you're ready to go out on the town.
I have to host an event tonight at Cheney University outside of Philadelphia. So, you know, I'm dressed to the nines. I'm ready for that. So
He is dressed to the nines.
You don't need our approval. You're looking clean though. You look very handsome. But why did you want Max's take and not mine? My fashion expertise isn't good enough here?
Because Max is usually wearing the three-piece. When I usually don't care about a man's opinion. I would always come to you, Molly.
Yeah.
But in the case of the three-piece Tom Ford suits, Max has a couple of them.
Yeah.
That's why I leaned on.
That's a three-piece Tom Ford with the Tom Ford tie and the white shirt. You can't. It's a perfect black tie outfit.
Yeah. That wasn't too expensive. That was just a couple dollars. All right, let's get into it. Speaking of well-dressed, Tom Brady returns from his 4-game suspension just in time for the Patriots to take on the Browns this Sunday. Brady has won 172 career games since becoming the Patriots' starting quarterback in Week 3 of 2001. Listen to this. While the Browns have won 175 games over their last 29 seasons. Stephen A., what do you expect to see from Brady against Cleveland?
Oh, I expect to see a very angered individual. He's a guy that's thrown for 4,000 yards plus for the last 5 consecutive years, if not longer. And we all know he's going against the Cleveland Browns, they're the 27th ranked defense in the NFL. They're like about 16th against the pass, 23rd in yards allowed. But ultimately, they're 0-4. Their team on the come up. The only bright spot for the Cleveland Browns, as far as I'm concerned, is 2 things. Hugh Jackson, the head coach, because he has them playing very competitive football for the most part, outside of them getting beat up by the Philadelphia Eagles on opening day. They blew a lead against the Baltimore Ravens, but they were competitive. They lost to the Miami Dolphins, but they should have won that game if their field goal kicker had parquet. You know, the flavor says butter. He's not butter. He's parquet, okay? And then, of course, you've got a situation here where they played against the Washington Redskins last week, and they lost. But Hugh Jackson's got them competitive. The other bright spot would be Terrell Pryor, who Tim Tebow should learn a thing or two from. He's a quarterback in college that came to the pros to be a quarterback, but recognized that there were other attributes that obviously he could be very successful at exercising, mainly the wide receiver spot for Cleveland. And because of that, to me, as far as I'm concerned, he's been their MVP thus far this year. I think Terrell Pryor has been absolutely sensational, and he performed very well against Josh Norman last week. But in the end, that's not going to help them but so much against New England, because Tom Brady is back. They've got their franchise back in the saddle. And not only is he a future Hall of Famer, a 4-time Super Bowl champion, a former league MVP, one of the elite players in the game today, and one of the preeminent faces in the game of the National Football League, but he is ticked off. And if there was ever someone to take it out on with relative ease, I anticipate it will be the Cleveland Browns. I expect a very, very long Sunday afternoon for them. I expect a spectacular performance by Tom Brady, but it won't necessarily show in all the numbers, because I think he will annihilate them early, and he won't have to do but so much late, because Bill Belichick will call off the Wolves.
Yeah, I mean, is Tom Brady in his first game back after publicly claiming he was unfairly punished and threatening to take the case to the Supreme Court? Is that guy who has since seen the team go 3-1 and hear things about Garoppolo that you started to hear last year, that he's the quarterback of the future, and wow, Garoppolo's really good already and everything, before Garoppolo went down and they brought in Brissett, and then they went 3-1 without Brady, and oh, maybe Brady's a system quarterback, and all these kind of things. Is that Tom Brady going to be motivated? He's always motivated, but might he even have a little extra adrenaline this game? Yeah. And is he playing the Broncos defense or the Vikings defense? No. He's playing one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And to top it all off, guess who he has on the field this week? Gronkowski. When he has Gronk, the difference between Tom Brady, who went from just a really excellent young quarterback to maybe the greatest quarterback who ever lived, because of his ability to so quickly read defenses and so quickly make decisions and accurate throws. But the difference between Tom Brady without Gronk is a great quarterback on an excellent team that's going to make the playoffs. With Gronk, Tom Brady becomes the guy. The Patriots become the Super Bowl favorites, or one of the 2 or 3 teams favored to win the Super Bowl, and they will usually make a run, wind up at least in the AFC Championship game. That's what it's been with Gronk on the field. With Gronk on the field, Tom Brady's going to put on an offensive show, especially now you got Bennett, too. They got the 2 tight end sets with Bennett, who is, at his worst, a B-plus tight end offensively. They're going to put on an offensive show against a terrible defense, after which I will get a lot of people will tweet at me, oh, I thought Tom Brady was supposed to fall off a cliff, duh.
Oh,
yes, he will fall off.
That's your voice for your Twitter
yes,
fans?
it is. Yes, he will fall off a cliff
Lord.
sometime before the middle of next season. Could it be this week? Yes, but highly unlikely, especially given the circumstances.
Well, let's make a couple of things. In Vegas, when you talk about the Patriots, the last 35 times the Patriots have been favored by 5 or more. They've been 33-2 straight up. There's nothing that's going to change here. That's number one. Number two, let me 33-2 straight up. Let me make sure I emphasize. Something here. We all know what we anticipate Tom Brady would do, but what I'm really trying to say, opening this show with Tom Brady's, preempting Tom Brady's first game back after his 4-game suspension, is that I believe Tom Brady ain't just after a Super Bowl. I believe the Patriots and Patriots fans want Roger Goodell to have to hand that trophy to Tom Brady. It's one of those moments where if Tom Brady and the New England Patriots end up winning the Super Bowl championship, what I am here proclaiming is that an extra source of motivation, whereas you have the commissioner that hands the trophy to the owner and the...
Huh?
We lose Stephen A. for
We
a
lost
second
Stephen
there?
A. for a second. Yes, I know everyone thinks that Tom Brady will be extra motivated to win a Super Bowl this year, but let's not forget that last season, through the first half of the season, who was the MVP going to be? It was Tom Brady by so much there was no one else worth talking about. Then about 2/3 of the way through the season, a couple people started saying, well, what about Cam Newton? And then by the end of the season, actually it was Cam Newton. So you can't win the Super Bowl in week 5, Stephen A., your first week back. You ain't going to win the Super Bowl this upcoming Sunday against the Browns. You will cream the Browns. They will destroy the Cleveland Browns.
We all know that, Max.
But, he's not going to make any Super Bowl statement week 5.
Professor Kellerman, we know the sky is blue, just like we know the Patriots can't win the Super Bowl this week. Thank you for enlightening us. What I was trying to say was this, before technicalities rudely interrupted me.
That was
when
cosmic
you think about
censorship
Tom
right
Brady,
there. Yeah.
I truly believe that Tom Brady's biggest goal outside of winning the Super Bowl championship, the Patriots' biggest goal outside of winning the Super Bowl championship, is to make sure that Roger Goodell has to hand that trophy to Tom Brady. I'm telling you right now, there was no one happier that the New England Patriots lost in the AFC Championship game last January than Roger Goodell. There was no one happier than him. I think, and I don't think right now there's anyone rooting against the New England Patriots harder than Commissioner Roger Goodell. But you know something? I just think that Tom Brady is going to go berserk. I expect he'll be ready, and that's really all I have to say about it.
Oh, please, football gods, if you grant me anything.
It's what it is.
If you grant me anything, oh, great football gods, who they responded to my prayers about the Giants in the past. Please, let somehow the Cleveland Browns beat Tom Brady in his first game back.
Yeah, right. It's not going to happen. Good luck with that one.
Okay.
Fantasy owners, start Brady.
Good luck.
That's all I have to say. Let's get to America's team, though. They call it the billion-dollar playpen.
Who?
America's team?
Who's that? America's a great country.
It's
who's the great team? The Patriots?
Really
I thought we just
Cowboys.
finished talking about America's team. I thought we just
the
been talking about
real
America's team.
America's
Not
team.
some mediocre
it's the
bunch in
Steelers is the
Texas
actual,
contaminating the rest of this country.
Anything. The Cowboys are America's team.
goodness.
Get over it. What do you want from me?
Whatever.
It's not the Steelers.
Heck-Shram wins.
No.
Can I go? Can I continue
go.
here? Okay, thank you. They call it the billion-dollar playpen, but it's been anything but home sweet home for the Dallas Cowboys. Since the start of the 2015 season, the Cowboys, listen to this, they've only won 2 games at AT&T Stadium. How is this possible? During that same span, Wiley High School Frisco Lone Star, Allen High School, and the Alabama Crimson Tide have 3 wins, while Lake Ridge High School and Texas A&M have the same amount of wins as Dallas there. They host the Bengals this weekend. Stephen A., you're going to like this question. What do you make of the Cowboys' home field disadvantage?
Well, listen, let's understand why they have a disadvantage. Some people will point to the billion-dollar playpen. The fact that the stadium itself is absolutely sensational, no question about it. I've been there before. Jerry Jones did a spectacular job. There are distractions. People can be in the concession areas and still peek out, and the Jumbotron is so huge, so big. I think it's like 50 yards wide or 60 yards wide. I mean, listen, it is spectacular. But the number one reason that the Dallas Cowboys have a disadvantage at home is because they're a mediocre franchise. They don't win often enough. And as a result, the fervor that you'd get, the momentum that you could ride, a home crowd needs evidence that that stuff actually works for them. And when that is not the case, it's going to be the momentum, the uproar, the fervor, the rabid following. It's going to be a bit dissipated to some degree. There's just no way around that. The Dallas Cowboys have all these distractions, the uniforms, the cheerleaders, the stadium, and everything else, because they know they can't rely on the product that they put on the field to come through on a week-to-week, year-to-year basis.
But we see it.
That's the problem.
But we see it with other franchises, like the New York Knicks, by the way, Stephen A., that still sell out the Garden like for consecutive months on end, even when they're a last-place franchise. There's some franchises that resonate in a way with the fans where even when they're not great, the fans support. The problem the Cowboys have is the stadium is so big, there's so many seats to fill, and with standing room only, you get over 100,000 people in there. Jerry Jones wants to sell tickets. So fans take road trips. You know, opposing teams fans take road trips. They want to go see their team play the Cowboys at the 8th wonder of the world or whatever you want to call it. So you get fans from other teams in there. I mean, that's really what's happening, is the fact that they're bad.
Hey, Max Kellerman, quick question.
Yeah.
Where were you last month?
Dallas Cowboys Stadium, yeah.
Yeah, wait, why were you there?
A fight. Canelo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a great stadium, and they use the stadiums to bring other amenities there because they got to rely on it because they damn sure can't rely on the team.
Quick story about that. I called Manny Pacquiao's fight along with Jim Lampley and Roy Jones in 2010 against Antonio Margarito, okay? That was November 13th, 2010. At that moment, after that fight, Manny Pacquiao had more wins that year at Dallas Cowboys Stadium, now AT&T Stadium, than the Cowboys did. And in fact, the Cowboys wouldn't tie Pacquiao until their last home game of the season right before Christmas, December 19th. One fighter had as many home wins that year as the Dallas Cowboys, 2010. They don't have really a home field advantage.
No, that's why we called it a disadvantage. All right, now that we've beat up on the Cowboys enough, let's talk about they're actually having a very good season, and much of that success is being linked to their rookie quarterback, Dak Prescott, who in 4 games so far has thrown for over 1,000 yards, has 5 total touchdowns, and hasn't thrown a pick yet. That is what I find most impressive, but a major surprise this season has also been their solid defense. So is Dak Prescott getting too much credit for their success, Stephen A.?
I believe he is, believe it or not. He's been very impressive. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but that offensive line has been stout. Ezekiel Elliott has been a stud, and the defense has not been that bad. And when you look at Rod Marinelli and what they've been doing with that defense, when you look at McClain and how he's come back and how well he played last week, when you look at the pieces that they have been missing, the DeMarcus Lawrences of the world, the the Randy Gregorys of the world and others, and somehow, some way, they still manage to be in this position. Dak Prescott deserves a lot of credit because he's a 4th-round pick and a rookie, you know, playing lights out because he's not turning the ball over. But when you look at numbers, look at Ezekiel Elliott and the 278 yards he's rushed for in the last 2 weeks. Look at this defense and how it stepped up to the challenge, making key stops at pivotal moments. Look at this offensive line not just protecting Dak Prescott, but also creating holes for Ezekiel Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys running game. And when I look at it from that perspective, I think that Dak Prescott hasn't had to come to the rescue, per se. He was impressive against the Redskins. We can't take anything away from them. Can't take anything away from the fact that he hasn't turned the ball over. But the reality is that I think everybody's treating him like he's the second coming of Dan Marino. When Dan Marino took over for Don Strock years ago, if I remember correctly, and had Mark Super Duper and had Mark Clayton and went out there and played lights out, and in his second year took the Miami Dolphins to the Super Bowl because he was flinging 300-yard games all over the place just with a rifle arm and doing everything, you know, en route to reminding us or to telling us he was going to be a future Hall of Famer. That's not what I'm getting from Dak Prescott. I'm getting a guy that's far more impressive than I thought he would be because of where he was drafted, by virtue of the fact that he's not turning over the ball and he seems very poised. But that running game and that defense deserves more credit than Dak Prescott at this moment in time.
You done with your soliloquy, as you call them when I do them? You all done with that?
Professor Smith?
Sure.
Yeah, Professor Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah.
Because he is not
I do look
getting
like a
too
professor
much
today. But doctor will suffice because I am Dr. Smith. I do have an honorary doctorate
You do?
from my alma mater. So
From where?
Dr. Smith,
You have an
Dr. Smith
honorary
would be
doctorate?
Who
applicable.
gave you an honorary doctorate?
I need to know this.
Winston-Salem State University.
Wow.
Well,
My-
congratulations, Dr. Smith.
Dr. Smith,
So,
I apologize.
Dr. Smith will
They
be
don't you take
just
the
fine.
honorary away after
I
that. You
apologize,
just
yeah.
earned that was your
Yeah.
dissertation.
Listen, Doc, that's my bad.
Yeah, look, Dak Prescott's not getting too much credit. He's getting the appropriate amount of credit.
Appropriate.
That's right,
Lord.
appropriate. He is getting the credit he deserves. No one's calling him the second coming of Dan Marino. That's a nice straw man you invented. But people think he does look like a young stud quarterback. Now, last year, the idea with the Cowboys was, boy, with that offensive line, if their defense could just be middle of the pack, which it is this year, and Whedon and some backup quarterback can just tread water till Romo gets back, maybe they could make a run. You knew the Cowboys underneath it all just needed a pretty good quarterback and they could maybe stay in the mix. But they have something better than a pretty good quarterback. They have a really good quarterback. Now, he is second in QBR in the NFL at this moment. We all know Matt Ryan is running away with it right now in terms of putting distance between himself and the rest of the pack at the quarterback position, given the way his offense is played. And quarterbacks get a lot of credit, as you pointed out, for the way the whole system works and the way they're integrated into it. Matt Ryan deserves that credit. So does Dak Prescott. Other than Matt Ryan, he is playing as well, according to QBR, better than any other quarterback in the NFL. Now, if you have questions about Dak Prescott, and I do, it's not about whether he's actually an excellent quarterback or he's going to have an excellent career should he stay healthy. I think yes, my answer is yes. The question is, does he hit a rookie wall this year? What happens when other teams start game planning for him as they compile more and more tape on him? You know he's not going to throw no interceptions. What happens when they turn the ball over and things aren't going their way? What happens when the schedule gets much tougher because it's been quite easy so far? The Dallas Cowboys so far, all 4 games have come against last-place teams. And their 3 wins combined 3-9 record for the teams that they've beaten. So those are the questions about Dak Prescott. I mean, it's not, is he good or not? We all know he's good. Can he continue to be good? We all know he deserves that. Others also deserve credit on the Cowboys, but so does he, and he's getting that credit correctly.
Well, let me ask you a question. Well, you have your questions, I have mine. Don't tell me what questions to field or what is the appropriate question to ask. I'm answering the question that was asked to me. That's what I
said he's
feel
getting
like
the appropriate
saying.
amount of
When I
credit.
think about that, when I think about Dak Prescott, you know what I think about, Max? The man has completed 89 passes, 68% of his passes. It's very impressive. 90 QBR, very impressive. Has only thrown three touchdowns. Only 3 touchdowns in 4 games. Well, let me also say this. 29 of these receptions went to Cole Beasley. 29 of those receptions went to Jason Witten. So when I look at it from that perspective, I see a guy that's throwing in between the numbers, short, intermediate passes, and feeding off of that. All I'm trying to say to you is when I think about a quarterback and whether or not somebody's spectacular, I like to see the ability to throw outside the numbers, to feed your wideouts. I want to see the Terrence Williams have more than 14 receptions in 4 games. I know Dez has been hurt, and I get all of that. but I want to see those kind of things. Or a Bryce Butler who's got about 13 receptions in 4 games. I want to see more of that outside the numbers. Let me see you throw the long ball. He hasn't been asked to do that as of yet.
No, he's a rookie.
It'll be interesting to see.
They're handling him correctly. That's why they've won. Listen,
I'm not saying
they've won games they're supposed to win.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're
same thing
changing
with
the
Carson
narrative.
Wentz.
I'm not saying they're mishandling him. I'm saying to you that there are things that I haven't seen. I got news for you. I've seen Carson Wentz throw a deep ball. I've seen him connect with Jordan Matthews on a couple of passes. I have yet to see Dak Prescott connect with anybody on for the Dallas Cowboys. It would be nice to see that.
Well, if the question is who would you rank 1 and who would you rank 2 so far based on the eyeball test this year, Carson Wentz or Dak Prescott among rookie quarterbacks, I put Carson Wentz 1, little ahead of Dak Prescott at this moment. That doesn't mean Prescott's getting too much credit.
But that wasn't the question.
The question is Prescott getting too much credit? He's the quarterback of a team that's 3-1, and the one loss came by a point. Is he getting too much credit? 4 games into his NFL career, everyone knows about the offensive line.
Ezekiel Elliott has rushed for 278 yards in the last 2 games. I think that has a lot to do with the success of the Dallas Cowboys offense, has a lot to do with their running game, has a lot to do with the offensive line, and has a lot to do with a defense that right now is ranked 10th in the NFL. For the Dallas Cowboys, that's a very significant thing.
I think that a lot of it has to do with playing the Browns and the Bears. I mean, you know, you really want to talk about it. They've had a weak schedule. But Dak Prescott can't choose the schedule. He can't choose the offensive system, which everyone knew this year. Even had Romo been the quarterback, had he been healthy, everyone knew they drafted Elliott where they did because they wanted to make use of that offensive line in the running game. That was going to be the game plan coming into the season. It's Dak Prescott's fault that they're following it to success. His fault that they're playing weak teams. All he's doing is balling.
Gentlemen, let's pick it. Who you got? You going Bengals or Cowboys?
Bengals.
Well, you know, ask me first because we know it's important for Max to have the last word, even if he has to regurgitate his comments about 4 or 5 times. So ask me first because we all know he's going to interrupt just to get in the last word to say the same thing that he said 10 minutes ago.
If I don't interrupt,
what's the question?
I don't get to say anything.
Ask me.
Okay, yes.
Ask me.
Stephen A.
What's the question?
Stephen A., who are you going with, Cowboys or Bengals?
Bengals. Oh, sorry.
Bengals.
Both going with the Bengals.
Bengals.
All right. So you just...
One more thing, I'd just like to have the last word on this. Bengals. Did I mention Bengals?
By the way, their defense, I want to have the last word. 10th in points, the Cowboys. Very impressive. So you just heard from these two lovelies. We want to know what you guys think at home. Is Dak getting too much credit for the Cowboys start? Go on the First Take Twitter page, vote. We will share those results a little later in the show. First Take, just getting started. Coming up, Odell Beckham has a change of heart. Stick around to hear what he had to say after the break. The coach, Herm Edwards, will be in the house and join that conversation. Always good to have him. Also, Dwayne Wade was asked if LeBron James could ever eclipse his airness. We will tell you what he said a little later in the show. Keep it locked.
As funny as it sounds, that's really all I care about, is being able to have that ability to be a blessing to someone else, to be an inspiration.
That was Odell Beckham Jr. yesterday. He appears to be in a better place after his rough game last weekend against the Vikings, where he received an unsportsmanlike penalty. Coach in the house, Herm Edwards, how are we doing?
Good to be here.
Yeah. You ready to talk? I don't know if you've talked to any Odell Beckham yet this week, have you? First time you get a shot at it?
Are you familiar with Odell Beckham Jr.?
Do you know what's been going on? Because we have the latest details, so we wanted to get your thoughts. Yes.
Yeah, this shouldn't have never taken place.
Yeah.
Should have been solved last year, but obviously it's where it's at. Hopefully it's drawn a conclusion, and this young man will go perform, and he can be emotional, and that's great. We want to see his enthusiasm. We want to see all that. Just don't become combative.
No question.
That's what he's got to figure out. Don't become combative. Stay emotional. Don't make it combative.
Speaking of that, Coach, Sunday Night Football, he gets the Green Bay Packers. Who do you think wins that one?
I like Green Bay in Green Bay. I like Aaron Rodgers. I like the fact that Nelson and Rodgers hooked up last week. As we know, this Giant defense does a nice job of preventing you from running the football. Harrison and those guys, Olivier Vernon. But don't get to the quarterback a whole lot. Only 4 sacks. And they don't take the ball away. That's not a good thing against an Aaron Rodgers football team. And they give up high percentages on 3rd down. That's not good when you face Aaron Rodgers. So I think Green Bay up there is very difficult to beat them. Aaron Rodgers is the type of quarterback that he can make the unannounced play. that puts a lot of pressure on the back end of your secondary. Their secondary is average at best. I'm talking about the Giants. And so I think they win this game.
I like the Giants actually here in an upset on the road. And I like, it's not just I'm a Giants fan. I picked Minnesota to beat them, obviously, at Minnesota last week. I think the Giants are in a more desperate situation now, 2-2. I think that they are highly motivated, and Odell is highly motivated. Eli doesn't have a problem playing at Lambeau. I mean, he beat Brett Favre in the NFC Championship game. He beat Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau last time they made the Super Bowl run. So he can play at Lambeau. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the best player in football, period. It doesn't always look that way if he's going up against a Mike Zimmer defense or if his line isn't right, but I think he's still the best player in football. But the Giants right now, also in terms of the secondary, coach, real quick, the safeties aren't any good, but I like their corners a lot, and they're getting Eli Apple back, it looks like, the Giants. And Sam Shields on the other side, it looks like might not be playing.
Eli Apple. Good luck.
Right, okay, but he's he's the third corner in a pretty good tandem. Meantime, Sam Shields isn't playing, if he's not playing, and right now he hasn't been practicing, I believe. Odell is due. You know, like, not to reduce it to this, but when you talk about they don't take the ball away, they're not going to end the season with no takeaways. You know, if the season ends today, they have no takeaways. They're not going to end the season that way. They are due to come away with a plus turnover differential by taking the ball away once or twice. Odell Beckham is due to see the end zone a couple of times in this game. I think it adds up to a highly motivated Giants offense stealing one from the Packers at Lambeau.
You know, Christmas comes once a year, too. So you have to wait for it, right? So they're going to do, when they're going to do it. They played 4 games already.
This week they're going to do it.
Hurry up. Let's go.
You're in line.
Yes, sir.
Coach, the only part where I would respectfully disagree with you is that you don't always have to wait for Christmas. Be a Dallas Cowboy hater, and Christmas comes early on quite a few occasions because they see to it that it has for me anyway. But getting back to Max, I think you're a bit emotional. No surprise there in rooting for the Giants and thinking that the Giants are going to win this game. I want you to take a couple of things into consideration. First of all, at some point in time, and it hurts me to say this because I'm very, very fond of this man, but we've got to start talking about Jerry Reese a little bit more. Last season, the Giants' defense was historically bad. I mean, they were so pathetic. You might as well took the word D. I mean, it's offensive to have the word D in the Giants when you're mentioning the Giants. That's how bad they were. Well, you go out and you spend $113 million in guaranteed money with Olivia Vernon, with Damon Harrison, with Jason Pierre-Paul, with Janoris Jenkins, and what do you have for it? I mean, they only put 2 quarterback hits on Sam Bradford. That's it. 2 quarterback hits on Sam Bradford on Monday night when they played up against Minnesota. Okay? Kirk Cousins has thrown an interception in every single game this year except for when he played against the Giants. Except for when he played against the Giants. They have how many takeaways on this year? NFL worst, 1 takeaway, 1 turnover, all right? They've got a grand total of 4 sacks. Von Miller damn near has that many by himself. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you're not getting pressure on a quarterback, you're not forcing turnovers, and you're going to beat Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau Field? I cannot see it. Eli Apple, he's got promise. And by the way, his mama Apple, doing work for the network. I think she's done a good job whenever I've seen her work. I'm very, very impressed.
Fan.
But I got, yes. I'm very impressed with her. But I got to tell you, I'm just looking at Eli Apple. He's got a lot of promise. But when you look at the Giants overall as a defense, I mean, right now, there's no D in New York City, Coach. The Jets stink. Their secondary is suspect. Their linebackers can't defend against anybody. They're completely relying on their pass rush, and there's but only so much they could do. And with the Giants, it's damn near the same, except that the Jets have a better pass rush from their front 4 than the Giants do. That's about
Sam Shields,
no
by the way,
D in New York whatsoever.
Sam Shields, ruled out.
Okay,
so Sam Shields ruled out, and Odell is due and motivated, and Eli can play okay at Green Bay. I'm telling you, watch this Giants offense.
I hope so. I hope it's
I didn't know Sam Shields was out.
Yeah.
I didn't know Sam Shields was going to be out for this game, but I'm saying that gives me a little trepidation.
Right.
But I'm still going to pick the Packers.
I hope it's one of those games where we see a lot of big plays in the pass game. It'd be great. It's great for television, great for football.
Incidentally, Jerry Reese as a GM, who, you know, took over a pretty good situation and then won the Super Bowl, and I was very high on. I was doing a show in New York radio, so were you, Stephen A., at the time. Back-to-back, we had radio shows, and there was a lot of praise of, you know, the great Jerry Reese. But His recent drafts have not been good. Obviously, Odell Beckham Jr. notwithstanding. And I don't know if he was traumatized by a linebacker early in life or something, like he got ran over by a linebacker. I mean, he seems to have an aversion to linebackers. You know, that linebacking core for the Giants is really not good. And it's like they don't use draft picks on linebackers, and they don't sign them in free agency for big money. The front four is actually pretty good. I like the Giants' front four, and I like their corners. But their linebackers and their safeties also, but especially the linebackers, it ain't good, Coach.
Well, we just talked about it. They're 45% completion percentage on third down. They got 4 interceptions, or excuse me, no interceptions. They got 4 sacks. That's hard to play that way in this league. I mean, you have to be able to hit the quarterback. We saw that when the Giants played Minnesota. Now, they didn't get to him, but Eli understood, we're not taking sacks. I'm going to throw the ball away before I take a sack. They were intimidated of this defense. They were intimidated. The same thing with the Denver Broncos. You're intimidated as an offense when you see it, and it knocks your whole system out of whack because you can't hold on to the ball.
Is that so is the key matchup the offensive line of the Giants, which has not been very good, versus the front four of the Packers? Can they get pressure without bringing extra guys? That's the reason Odell, I think, the real reason he was so frustrated was he couldn't get into his route because Eli's getting rid of the ball so fast.
Well, that and the fact that they're rolling up on him. And what I've suggested, and it's just me, I'm sitting here in the studio. I'm not a coach anymore. Last year, 36% of the time, he was in the slot. This year, 7%. If you put him in the slot, you can't roll up on him because he's off the line of scrimmage. So now he's got a two-way go. When you put him outside the numbers, you can roll up on him, kick a guy over the top. Eli's looking over there, they're double covering him, I'm going somewhere else. And I know Shepard's a big player, but your best player is number 13. Got to find a way to get him the ball a little bit more.
Very good point. I hope the Giants are listening. But speaking of Giant struggles, San Francisco, even worse. Blaine Gabbert Blaine Gabbert last night. He was stinking, and Gabbert cost Chip Kelly. Will he cost Chip Kelly his job? Herm, sticking around for that conversation. Okay.
No, I said the Bears and the Browns. It's the Bears and the Niners. It's the other terrible team.
Yeah. Oh, you
Sorry, I lumped them together. The Niners, the Browns, the Bears, they all kind of get put into a pile of terrible
Yes, you're
wins.
wrong, but right at the same time, yes.
Exactly.
All right, let's get to the next subject here. Speaking of the Niners, it wasn't a pretty game for them last night as they were dominated by the Carson Palmer-less Cardinals. Blaine Gabbert sacked 7 times through 2 picks in the loss. Gabbert, whose record as a starter is 9-31, is now tied for the 2nd worst record through a quarterback's first 40 career starts among those to debut since 1970. Here's Chip Kelly.
I don't think tonight we're going to talk about that. You know, I mean, we're going to go and look at everything. We've got a couple days off here, you know, in terms of getting ready for Buffalo, and then, you know, we'll assess the film and we'll move from there. But we're not talking about who's playing here or whatever in a game that's 10 days from now. So. And I understand you have to ask the question. I understand that. So, but right now, that's not, you know, not a conversation right now.
All right, so Chip keeping it close to the vest, not saying if the team will make a move just yet, with his team at only 1-4 this season. How much time, Stephen A., should Chip Kelly have in the NFL?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't bother me if he was fired before this season finished. Now, I know that would be a bit extreme, but understand why I'm saying that. I'm not saying that because of the their 1-4 record at this particular moment in time. I'm saying it because I never thought he should have had the job in the first place. After the job that he did in Philadelphia, there's no way on earth that he should have gotten fired in the penultimate game of last year's regular season, and 3 weeks later, the man ends up with a deal that gives him still remains him as a head coach in the NFL with a $6 million a year contract. I'd also like to say that Trent Baalke needs to be fired quicker than him. And the reason I say that is because Trent Baalke has ruined this franchise as far as I'm concerned. Let's take into account the fact that in 2011, Jim Harbaugh comes on board. They are 13-3 his first year. The next year, they're 11-4-1. They go to the, they're in the NFC Championship game. They go 12-4 the following year. They go to the Super Bowl and lose to the Baltimore Ravens because I ran out of time. Trent Baalke and Ned York get in the way of Jim Harbaugh. Supposedly, they can't deal with him. They ignore the fan base. They ignore the productivity of the franchise. They ignore the productivity of the team because of their own selfish feelings. They ultimately forced Jim Harbaugh out of there because they ruined the next season, which ended up being 8-8, by the way. And so then you go the route of Jim Tom Sula. None of us have ever heard from him. Linebacker coach, ultimately, got the head coach job. Only ended up with 5 wins that season. Smart enough to get him out of there. And what do? You go the route of Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly, mind you, that had the same Philadelphia Eagles squad, essentially, that exists right now with Doug Peterson, except their offense was prolifically faster, running plays every 23 seconds, running the defense into the ground, giving them no consideration whatsoever. Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz changed that. Peterson, because of what he has the offense doing. Jim Schwartz, because he has a defense with fresh legs, and he actually prioritizes stopping the opposing offense. And look at the Philadelphia Eagles right now. Yet in San Francisco, the same old Chip Kelly that was in Philadelphia is the same Chip Kelly that's in San Francisco. Offense looking a bit sporadic, but has its good moments, has potential, but at the same time trying to play at a faster pace, doing it at the expense of a defense, and as a result, ultimately not winning football games. So that may not be Chip Kelly's fault per se. It's more Trent Baalke's fault for hiring him. Chip Kelly has given us every indication, based on the evidence, that this man needs to be back in college. He doesn't need to be coaching a professional franchise because he doesn't take into account conventional wisdom and conventional football and how that works for professional grown men in the National Football League. They need to clean house as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying that Chip Kelly needs to go because it's all his fault. I'm saying he should not have been there because Trent Baalke shouldn't have been in a position to hire him. He should be gone for sabotaging Jim Harbaugh. Plain and simple. And the evidence proves it because the 49ers stink. And it has everything to do with Trent Baalke.
Sure. And by the way fans feel about GMs, basically, or executives generally, unless you're a brilliant, brilliant executive, is you can work until you expire. Fans really don't care. Like, oh, this guy's giving me a headache. Is he productive? Good. Then who cares about your headache? Go away. And when a GM who hasn't shown to be as brilliant as the coach and a coach don't get along and the coach who's a brilliant coach leaves, fine, blame the GM. I'm all for that. But as it pertains to Chip Kelly, it's no great mystery why people are down on Chip Kelly in terms of the football X's and O's and everything. You have more players in college, so you can, a guy is tired, fresh legs in on the defense, whatever, you can, college players more likely to sacrifice in ways without thinking about their long-term future as a professional NFL player. It's easier to get them to do things that aren't in their best interest. So it's not a mystery why people feel like Chip Kelly, that might work in college. It's not going to work in the pros. Chip Kelly apparently is extremely stubborn and maybe slower to learn this than others. Tom Coughlin, once upon a time, several times, was about to lose his job because of his relationship with players. And stubborn old Tom Coughlin was like, uh-oh, my job? Okay, let's figure out a way to get this done. I'll make certain compromises without selling myself out. I think Chip Kelly can do the same thing. In terms of Colin Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert, they have a game coming up 10 days from now, after a 10-day rest against the Buffalo Bills. I believe that's the drop-dead spot for Blaine Gabbert. They will likely lose that game at Buffalo against that defense. I wouldn't put Kaepernick in against that defense first week back anyway. You sacrifice Blaine Gabbert to that game, and at that point, Chip Kelly can say, okay, time to start Colin Kaepernick, who then would have another, week or altogether be 2-3 weeks to bulk up a little bit more. I think Chip still thinks he needs to get a little bigger and stronger. And then you start him at home against the Tampa Bay Bucks. If at that point, when you look at the Niners' schedule versus they get New Orleans at San Francisco, terrible defense. They'll lose to Arizona, they lose to New England. Then they go to Miami, it's winnable. Go to Chicago, winnable. New York Jets at home, winnable if you got a better quarterback. At Los Angeles, we'll see what the Rams are. But if they can win, Coach, 4 games with Colin Kaepernick, and Chip can go into the offseason with 5 wins and a better second half, I think Kaepernick and Chip can maybe save each other.
Well, I do know this. Last year when Chip was in Philadelphia, or the previous year, excuse me, when he was in Philadelphia, and we had seen what was going on with Colin, and he got benched. I was the one to suggest early that, the perfect place would be to Philadelphia, because he would be in a system that he could really reveal his skill set, and he would have a coach that would really be excited about having this guy, because this was his Mariota in the National Football League before the young man came into the league. And he's now with Tennessee. And I said, I just want to see what's going to look like. So, you guys both make some great points. Look, Stephen A. makes great points about this organization. Historically, this organization, obviously with Mr. Bartola, you know, and then the family and what they had accomplished with Steve Young and Joe Montana historically. We just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. I mean, we get all that, and they're not at that place anymore. I get it. And Coach Harbaugh came in and was terrific. And then we saw this, whatever it was, this mutual departing of whatever it may be. How it happened, don't know. Don't want to get involved in that. But going forward, spinning it forward, I think if you're Coach Kelly, you have to play Kaepernick eventually, because this is the guy. Now, is he who he was 2 years ago? I don't know, but I'd like to see.
Yep.
Just as a fan, I want to just see this. If he had this guy at quarterback, now he doesn't have a lot of weapons around him. They got a runner, which they need if he can stay healthy. Don't really have a lot of perimeter players, but the quarterback alone in this system, when it's run right, is difficult now. If Kaepernick's right, and I'd like to just see it. I like to see. Let me just see it for about 8 games, see what it looks like.
Weird that they seem to be fighting themselves. Like, oh, they brought in Chip Kelly. That must mean that they want to keep Kaepernick. Wait, now Kaepernick wants to leave. Oh, now Kaepernick's staying, but Chip Kelly don't want to play him. It seems like they need each other. And after they lose to the Bills with Gabbert in, you know, on a 10 days rest, I can't imagine that at that point he doesn't start Cap.
You have to do something, because the credibility of the football team is all of a sudden looking at this situation and going, what are you doing, Coach? We got to give this guy a chance. And when you lose the locker room as a head coach, you're done. You know, and this game is still about winning. This is not recreational football. This is professional football. And you have an obligation to win. And when you look at those players in that locker room, if you got a guy sitting over here, and he's your number 2 guy, by the way, he's 1 hit away from playing, and they're trying to figure this all out. You lost your best player, Navarro Bowman. He was keeping this locker room and this glue together. Well, he's still there, but he's not playing. So you got to do something. You got to fix this. And I think what he said in the press conference was very revealing when he said this. We're not talking about that right now.
Yeah, right now.
They're talking about it today.
Yes.
He didn't say that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
So Gabbert's the guy.
They're talking about it today. They're talking about it today.
I just hope Colin Kaepernick's healthy once they do put him in. Stephen A., did you want to jump in?
Nope.
Nope.
I'm ready. Let's move on.
He had that dead shoulder or whatever.
No,
Make
yeah,
sure when he gets in that he's healthy, so he's in.
Stephen A. made great points, and I didn't need to go walk back that. What he said was truthful. It's right, spot on. You know, and I just think going forward now, where they're gonna go. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Stephen A.
You know what I love Coach, about what you just said? You didn't seem surprised at all at how truthful and prophetic I was, because you know that to be the case all the time. I like that, Coach. I like that.
Or he had to just highlight the fact that you actually made great points.
And I just found out that he was a professor. He's a doctor.
No, Herm, he's a doctor. Did you hear it?
Stephen A. is always.
I didn't know.
Stephen A. is always truthful.
Excuse me.
Rarely right, but always truthful.
This guy right here, he's something else.
He's
but
the
I
best.
do like him.
That's my man. He's the best. I love him.
All right, Coach, have a great weekend. We'll see you on the Blitz, and hopefully you'll be with us next week.
All right. See you later.
Hold it.
Let me just say,
Hold
I can't
it.
hear Stephen A. So I'm
Oh,
going
he's
to
saying hold it.
Hold it. You know good and damn well when I bring up Chip Kelly and Philadelphia Will Cain, what I'm talking about. It ain't just football. I know he had a 26-21 record overall. Nobody's questioning his football acumen. But your ability to relate to and ingratiate yourself with players, the way he had alienated a bunch of dudes, which ultimately led to him getting fired, because that, coupled with his lack of productivity that last particular season, got Jeffrey Lurie to not even wait for the final game of the year before firing him. He said, get the hell out of here now. Now, I worked in Philadelphia for 17 years, right, for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I know Jeffrey Lurie. He's class personified, and there's no way in hell that he would have made the decision to let this man go before the season was even finished, unless he was that divisive. That is why I said he had no business getting the San Francisco job. And you know that, Will.
I totally respect who you know in Philadelphia, your knowledge of the Philadelphia market, but I also know this, that innovators are also very often unwelcomed into their sphere, whether or not it's Steve Jobs or anyone that threatens the conventional wisdom of an industry. But that's how you succeed as well. That's how 7 Seconds or Less developed in Phoenix. That's how the Golden State Warriors figured out how to win. That's how Steve Jobs figured out how to innovate the technology market, and that makes people a little cold towards you. I'm not saying Chip Kelly is Steve Jobs, but I'm saying you don't know sometimes when innovation is coming because you're so resistant to it.
But there's 32 jobs in the NFL, Will Kane. There's 32 jobs. And the fact of the matter is that this dude, think about this, Will, and I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to be serious. I'm just going to ask you this question, and I will respect your retort, because I'm not going to debate this. I'm not going to debate this part with you, but I'm asking for your perspective here. A man with his chronicled and reported history at a different location ends up getting an equal, if not better job 3 weeks after being fired? You have no problem with that? None?
Because I have pause. You say I have no problem. Would that give me pause? Because I would have to ask myself, and again, I'll say this, I respect your knowledge on the ground, whether or not this is truly, truly a personal problem, a personality problem, or is it, which is often the case, just an instant reaction, an instant recoiling from anybody threatens the natural order of things, the way it's done, the status quo. That's why I'd have to ask
I want to talk about his innovation for a second, because maybe that's right. When you're 10-6, they can't get rid of you. As soon as you go a little under 500, aha, it doesn't work. Get rid of him. Ridiculous. Fine. But he inherited an Andy Reid team. He rode largely those players to the 10-6 records. He then systematically got rid of those players, and then doing it his way went, immediately got worse results. Now, you can argue, hey, give him a couple years to institute his own culture, his own way of doing things. That could be a legitimate argument, but there are conventional reasons that people can point to why it doesn't work in the pros, even though it worked in college, that seem to make a lot of sense. And if you lose the locker room, if the locker room turns against you, even if a neutral observer would say, yeah, but the locker room was wrong, it doesn't matter. The fact that they turned against you makes them right. As a head coach, it's incumbent upon you to communicate and lead those guys in the locker room. And if you're unable to do it, if you've lost your players, that's on you.
I would be interested, if I were in another organization, of seeing the process play out. And I think 10-6, 10-6, 6-9, I understand the locker room arguments, I do. I think that's worthy of a second chance.
I think that's strong.
Well, listen, I will say this. I appreciate you willing to acknowledge that it'll at least give you cause to pause, per se, because that's the whole point here. It's one thing to look at Chip Kelly's record and say 26-21, 2 winning seasons, even though one of those years he didn't make the playoffs, and then last year's debacle took place. It's another thing to couple all of that with why it happened. And then for him to have another job in 3 weeks is disgraceful.
See, Charlie Strong, I would apply your argument to. I would say Charlie Strong, he's a guy where actually, last stop, it took him a couple seasons.
Charlie Strong at Texas, Max.
Yeah.
Everybody don't know that Charlie Strong's at Texas.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, Texas, sorry.
They need to. Right. I don't know how they let that slip.
Right.
University of Texas.
His track record.
Just hijacking the block.
Charlie Strong's track record shows as a head coach, and it takes me a couple years to get the culture the way I want it, and then, look, great success. So it's taken him a couple years, and actually this year, who's to say that they even end below 500, which would be in the right direction. But Charlie Strong, I happen to know, you and I are on opposite sides of that debate.
Are we going to do that right now? Are we doing that right now?
Well, I'm just pointing it out. You guys just took over. What do you guys want to do? We done with
I'm just pointing out.
No, I had to come in and tell you where I thought you're wrong on that. I'll tell you why you're wrong on Charlie Strong.
Another day? Fine.
Yeah. Next time, just run out, though. I would have appreciated that. Would have been enjoyable. All right, let's get to arguably the marquee matchup of Week 5. The 3-1 Falcons face the undefeated Broncos at Mile High. Falcon stars Matt Ryan and Julio Jones both had career games last week against the Panthers. On the other side of the field, Trevor Siemian, who left last week's Broncos game with a left shoulder strain, is expected to play. Will, I want to start with you here. It's going to be a good one. Who wins?
It's strength on strength. It's a close call. Tie goes to the home team. I mean, the Denver Broncos haven't lost to an NFC team at home since 2011. You've got, by the way, an Atlanta Falcons team that's not just Julio Jones. I don't believe this is Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and that's the end of the story. I think those two running backs, one of which, by the way, Tevin Coleman, has some issues in Denver at Mile High Stadium. It's been the altitude this week. He has sickle cell, but he's supposed to play. But we'll see if that compromises his game whatsoever. Does certainly something they're going to watch. I think in the end, the tie goes to the home team, to the better defense over the offense. I'm taking the Falcons.
To the Broncos, you mean?
I'm sorry. I'm taking the Broncos.
Yes. Broncos are going to win. I don't think it's that hard a call. The Falcons have a high-flying offense and a bad defense, and the Broncos are Super Bowl champions who have seemed to have gotten better this season, who have an all-time defense that's not always perceived correctly as the all-time elite defense it is, because such a premium is on the passing game now that they don't present you the same kind of fearsome kind of blitzing attack that some of, like, you think of those real strong front sevens. Not that they don't also have that. And those are the kind of defenses you think about, the 85 Bears or the Baltimore Ravens or the LT Giants or something like that. This isn't that kind of defense exclusively. This is the kind of secondary that can totally shut down your passing game. And so I don't even think they're given enough credit for how great defensively they are. I don't see the Falcons as in the Broncos class yet. I don't think they've proven that. You look at the points they've given up, 31, 28, 32, 33. They have yet to give up fewer than 4 touchdowns worth of points in a game. And the Broncos have yet to give up even 3 touchdowns worth of points in a game. I like the Broncos clean.
Stephen A., is it a unanimous decision?
Well, I look at the Falcons. Well, listen, I have nothing to add in that regard. The Broncos definitely, to me, will win this game because they're going up against the 29th ranked defense in the National Football League, who's 30th in yards allowed. And by the way, they're second to last in terms of what they surrender through the air. And they're going up against Demarius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. And so when I look at it from that perspective, and then I combine that with Denver's defense primarily having to worry about Julio Jones more so than anybody else, I just believe that it's a foregone conclusion that Denver is going to win this game.
For some reason, and I know it doesn't make sense, I feel like the Falcons might pull this off. It's just a gut.
Falcons lost to Tampa Bay at home, by the way.
All right. Let's get to our next topic. We actually do have time, and I want to discuss it. So Phillip Rivers is currently playing without Keenan Allen, Danny Woodhead, and Antonio Gates, but he's still on pace for 4,404 yards, 32 TDs, and only 4 interceptions this season. The Chargers, meanwhile, they're on pace to go 4-12, putting up big numbers, but no playoffs. That's been pretty much the story of Rivers' career. That's why his former teammate LaDainian Tomlinson, LT telling NFL Network he thinks the Chargers are in rebuilding mode and should consider trading him. Rivers turns 35 in December. So if the Chargers were to trade Rivers, what team should be first in line, Will?
The Denver Broncos, the team we just got done talking about. And to me, this is a no-brainer for the Broncos. They offer, here's the hypothetical I offer you. They give the Chargers their choice of Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch and a second-round pick. I think that's the market set by the Sam Bradford trade. They got Sam Bradford for a first and a fourth. You get one of these quarterbacks that Denver took, not Siemian in the first round, but perhaps he's proven himself the equivalent of Lynch at this point, who's a first-round quarterback, plus a second, because Rivers is better than Bradford. And this is the deal. Denver's trading from strength. They're trading from surplus. They don't need 2 prospects. Both guys can't be on the field. In fact, they diminish each other's value. You got to get rid of them while they have their highest potential value, which is now. Couple that with your window. In the NFL, you've got a 3 to 4 year window, and you cannot sell me on the fact that Phillip Rivers right now in that 3 to 4 year window exponentially increases the Broncos' ability to win the Super Bowl.
Right, which is why they should have done this in the offseason. Absolutely right, Phillip Rivers on the Broncos. In fact, last year we were talking about this on Sports Nation. You know, should they trade Phillip Rivers? Because, and by the way, mainly for Phillip Rivers' sake. He's a great quarterback who is stuck in a situation where he's just never going to win a Super Bowl there. It doesn't seem like it. Although in the NFL, every time you think that, you know, suddenly a team makes a run. But San Diego has not seemed to be serious about putting a Super Bowl team around him. And when you think about Phillip Rivers on the Broncos, as though they could get, I mean, that is such a great fit. But we're in the middle of a season. So what you're talking about, 3 to 4 year window, the assumption is Rivers will play well till he's 40. He might. But
he's 34 now, so 38.
No, he's 36 now.
Oh, Rivers?
How old is Phillip Rivers right now?
Rivers is going to be 35 in December.
Okay, so 34. Okay, so yeah, he might have a 3 or 4 year window, or maybe even a little longer. The point is, the Broncos are defending a Super Bowl championship. This guy doesn't know the offense, hasn't played there, and now you're bringing him in half or a third of the way through the season where they're undefeated. The time to do this was the off season. Now, I don't know if you pull the trigger now, all the way, well, the season's underway, or maybe this upcoming off season. I don't know. You do it now.
Stephen A., your thoughts?
You know what? I ignored Will from the moment that he said the Denver Broncos was the team that Phillip Rivers needed to end up with. Because if you're the Broncos, you're one of 3 undefeated teams left in the National Football League. You've got the premier defense, which, by the way, led you to a Super Bowl title. You're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions. The parts around you in your new quarterback, meaning Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas, C.J. Anderson, etc., along with at least a decent offensive line, there's simply no excuse to change anything. Trevor Siemian has been playing. Certainly, he's looked better than Peyton Manning looked last year. Paxton Lynch even came in there and did a little something. And so when you look at it from that perspective, why even bother? At the end of the day, here's what it comes down to. You can say what you want, you can believe what you want, or whatever the case may be. If Phillip Rivers was going to go anywhere, talk to me about the Buffalo Bills, or to a lesser degree, actually to more of a degree, because I like Tyrod Taylor. Talk to me about the New York Jets. Talk to me about Phillip Rivers being in a New York Jets uniform.
The Rams.
Having Brandon Marshall to throw the football to. I mean, I look at, I'm think Phillip Rivers to San Diego. You could talk about the Rams. That would be another option. But I definitely think the New York Jets, if you want to legitimately compete for a Super Bowl with their ability to get at the passer, if you've got a quarterback experienced enough to refrain from making mistakes and get receivers the ball and make the offense more prolific, it might not put as much pressure on the defense and they could be formidable. And we can see where it goes from there.
That's
where I would think about it.
Yeah, but the reason it happens for the Broncos is because they're the ones to equip to answer both of your questions. I appreciate you ignored me because then you missed all of the wonderful arguments I did to back up my position. It's this, Max. Here's why you make the trade now. Because the Chargers would be more willing to do it now, seeing that they're in rebuilding mode. In the offseason, they didn't have that reality. They didn't know that reality. Now they do. So the Chargers
they know that reality in this upcoming
perhaps
off-season?
going forward.
Right.
But also on the Broncos side, the reason to do it now is because how is this a lose proposition for the Broncos? If Phillip Rivers can't come in and learn the offense, well, you've still got Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch, whichever quarterback wasn't traded away. So you could continue theoretically this continuity with the upside of, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, an all-time top 8 quarterback career-wise in the numbers. You have that potential icing, you take
because
that.
I think everything you're suggesting can be accomplished in this off-season where he has the whole preseason to prepare. And also, to Stephen A's point, I don't know if the Broncos really need now.
I'm just not willing to.
He makes them better. Phillip Rivers would make the Broncos better.
That's the end of that argument.
He makes them better.
They're 4-0.
That's the.
They
come on.
don't need to make a change. They've got 2 guys that can be their potential.
Good enough.
Future.
Good enough is not an argument.
Someone.
Good enough is not an argument.
They could win a Super Bowl.
The simple question is this: is Phillip Rivers better than Trevor Siemian?
Yes.
And I think we know the answer is yes. So does that make the Broncos better? Yes.
Yeah, but the question also is, at this point in the season, is Phillip Rivers better than anyone they got? Yes, he's better than most quarterbacks I've ever seen, really. He's an excellent quarterback. But are they good enough right now without him? Because it's not the offseason, middle of the season. There are other factors to consider. I think also the answer is yes. The Broncos could easily repeat this year. And getting Rivers doesn't mean necessarily that they have a better chance this season.
All right, I'm rolling with the doctor in this one, but I'm so proud of you guys. We got through 4 topics essentially.
It's my fault.
That's the
I came
first
in,
time
I was
ever,
shooting from the hip. I had a little
passion. I think in first take history, it's great. We touched on a lot of things. Really proud. Really
Next week we'll argue about Charlie Strong.
Good. I'm looking forward to that. We'll stay and put. The NFL coming down hard on Antonio Brown for his touchdown celebrations. Someone at the desk has a problem with it. We'll discuss. Do you have a problem with this?
I think the bow and arrow is silly. I mean, I don't think it was meant as a violent situation. But, you know, I don't have a problem with fining a player, including Antonio Brown, for twerking or doing whatever you want to call it.
Popping it.
You know, I mean, it is sexually suggestive and lewd. And if you're packaging family entertainment, I get it. Fine him, fine. Here's what I have a problem with. How does what a guy does, how he behaves after the fact, the play on the field is over, affect things like field position? That is absurd. It's one thing to enforce a code of behavior because you want a family product. Very violent product, by the way. But, and they sell alcohol during the commercials. But, okay, fine. It's for kids, right? Fine. It's one thing to say, we're going to fine you if you behave that way. That's okay. But to say that somehow, to insist that that behavior is somehow conflated with the actual competition on the field is asinine. I've never understood it, and I'm totally against it. So forget the fine. I'm upset by the fact that it cost you field position because you celebrated.
Stephen A?
Go ahead, Will. Go ahead, Will.
Well, I guess I disagree with Max. I don't have a problem with the punishment for the act. I have a problem with the application of the rule, which I can't parse. I can't figure out. It's like most things in the NFL these days. And to me, this is actually one of the biggest problems the NFL faces is we don't know what we're watching, apparently. We can't trust our eyes. We can't see reality because there's this alternate reality, a shadow reality that is the NFL rulebook. And to know what a catch is, or a fumble, or who recovered a fumble, or what's too much celebration, you got to sort of consult the oracles. And they throw chicken bones and look into the instant replay booth, and they come out with some arbitrary decision that's never consistent. And that's a problem for the NFL because it convinces us that it allows us to consider that it's unfair, that it's rigged. It allows us to go, wait, why is that not a catch? It was a catch in the game last week. It was a catch earlier in the game. I don't understand what's going on here. That's the biggest problem. And so this arbitrary enforcement, because we don't know what's violent, what's sexually subjective, what the definition of a catch is, that's a real problem for the NFL. And honestly, I don't know how they nail it down. I mean, how do you technically nail down what's sexually suggestive?
Were sexually suggestive. I do have to say.
Okay, but where's the line?
I think both of those were. I'm just saying.
You can't trust the eyes point really quickly is a very good point because I also have a beef there, but it's not so much in terms of the application of the rules. It's like your team scores, but am I allowed to be happy? Oh, they're reviewing the scoring play. I don't know. Did it count? Did it not count? You can't ever feel the emotion in the moment that you can be confident is a permanent emotion that you're allowed to feel that way because they apply all these rules in ways that are like Byzantine and hard to understand.
Stephen A.
Y'all are making it more convoluted than it really needs to be. Fact of the matter is simple. NFL should have a rule instituted, nothing sexually suggestive. That's it, period. If it's not sexually suggestive, because obviously kids are watching, what's the problem? Why is Josh Norman being fined? I understand the Antonio Brown fine. Do I think it deserved to be for $25,000? No. But I understand the fine because you don't want something sexually suggestive. But how in God's name is Josh Norman getting a fine for that? For what?
It falls under violence.
Especially here is the hypocrisy in it all. Look at the Redskins. Look at, you got the whole Native American issue, which Max has spoken eloquently about on many, many occasions, okay? And, you think about the bow and arrow and all of this other stuff. He being a member of the Washington Redskins, that may very well have been the reason that he did it. I don't see them looking to change the name. I don't see them looking to do anything about that. Why would you sit up there and penalize him for something that harmless? And that's just one of the examples. There are many others where the NFL has definitely been a bit excessive. I mean, you're controlling the shoes folks wear, the color socks they wear, and stuff like that. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. It doesn't stop, and that's why I applaud and completely appreciate Mike Tomlin and where he's coming from, where Mike Tomlin said we need you to be a bit more specific as to what warrants a fine, as opposed to something being so arbitrary and being implemented, on an arbitrary basis where you can't define exactly what the problem is until you are confronted by it. And if you got a problem with somebody, how about giving them a warning first and then make sure and see what happens thereafter,
so Stephen,
as opposed to just, deciding to fine them.
You would pare down the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in celebration to sexually suggestive. That's what you're saying. You'd allow the bow and arrow. Yes. You'd allow the flexing, yes, and all that.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I would allow the flex. You don't want anything. You don't want it going on for a minute or two or something like that. But at the same time, if somebody's flexing or whatever, what's the problem?
No. What about a guy slitting his throat, doing that kind of thing? That's okay?
Well, again, fine. Something sexually suggestive.
Or violent.
That's
okay, but here's the problem. So here's the problem. I'm with Stephen A. I'm with Stephen A. The way to fix your problems is to pare down your rule book. It's like the federal criminal code. Nobody can get their hands around it, and there's laws that contradict each other. They literally don't know how many things are against the law at the federal level at this point. We don't know what's going on in the NFL. However, paring it down doesn't solve all your problems because, as you point out, once you say violence is wrong in celebration, okay, throat slash bad, bow and arrow shooting good, where was the line there? I don't see what the bright line is. I agree, by the way. Josh Norman shouldn't be penalized. Carlos Hyde was penalized last night for flexing, literally doing sort of the Incredible Hulk flex. I mean,
I think there's an answer to your question. And it's nothing sexual at all. And in terms of the violence, because it's inextricably tied to a very violent sport, right? You got to do it on a case-by-case basis. And when they see something they don't like, they can say, okay, he did that. The next time someone does that, that's going to be a fine. I think people can be reasonable about what violent stuff constitutes what. And to Stephen A's point, I think that's the real reason. I don't think it's about the violence with the bow and arrow. I think that the Washington franchise is under some pressure about the name, and they felt that that hit a little too close to home.
No question, but the flexing should be allowed. And I don't need to see a man twerking, just throwing that out there. I know.
Never sacrifice
that's
field
your
position because they celebrated. That's absurd.
Our favorite debates here on First Take and barbershops everywhere across America. LeBron James versus Michael Jordan. The latest to weigh in on it is LeBron's former teammate and good friend Dwayne Wade. When asked if James could ever surpass MJ's greatness, Wade responded with this: "It's not possible. Can't go past it. How can you? That's as great as it gets. The only thing you can do, like I said, is be A1, AB. There's no way higher." So let's take a look at how the two stack up when we only look at what they've done at this point in their lives at the age of 31. They're actually pretty even when it comes to NBA titles, finals MVPs, and LeBron actually has one more regular season MVP title. The main difference, Jordan doesn't have the 4 finals losses. Stephen A., were you surprised, Wade saying this, that his boy couldn't surpass MJ?
I was a bit surprised because I didn't expect him to be that candid. I mean, he loves LeBron James. They're brothers. They're incredibly, incredibly tight. And nothing about that has changed nor will ever change. A matter of fact, D. Wade butted heads with Pat Riley upon LeBron James' departure from South Beach because Riley's old school. The minute LeBron James left, LeBron was the enemy. And he wanted everyone in the Miami Heat organization to adopt that mentality as LeBron James being the enemy. And D. Wade doesn't play that game. That's not who he is. He and I spoke about that personally on several occasions. That's not who he is. LeBron James is his brother for life, and that's just the way it's going to be. And even though LeBron James has friends like Chris Paul's the godfather to his sons, and, you know, he's tight with Melo and what have you, outside of Randy, Maverick, and Rich, nobody's closer to LeBron than you know, D. Wade along with CP3. And so please understand that. Having said all of that, I still can't deny the fact that D. Wade is absolutely right. Let's just call it what it is. LeBron James is the best player in the world. LeBron James belongs on the Mount Rushmore in NBA annals when you consider some of the things that he's been able to accomplish. He's not finished yet, but he never has, nor will he ever be Michael Jordan. And that is the reality. What LeBron James grew and matured into, MJ was that killer coming into the league. He just didn't have the parts to help him. That same dude that Larry Bird called the closest thing to God when he dropped 63 on Boston in just his second year in the league in the playoffs, that's Michael Jordan. That was never LeBron James. And so when you look at it from that perspective, let's also understand the biggest component. This is the biggest reason that we all have to undeniably agree with Dwayne Wade without any compunction whatsoever. I don't care if LeBron wins 4 more rings. LeBron James has 4 NBA Finals losses. Michael Jordan was 6 for 6 with 6 NBA Finals MVPs and never, ever, ever even allowed a series in the finals to reach a 7th game. I'm going to repeat that. There was never a Game 7. No matter what greatness we've seen from Michael Jordan, I have always contended that the greatest of Michael Jordan we would have ever seen is if Michael Jordan was pressed with his back against the wall with a championship on the line in a Game 7 of an NBA Finals. And that's the one thing Michael Jordan robbed us of, because he never allowed a series to get to a Game 7. That is a fact. And because of that reality, let's be clear, LeBron James never has, nor will he ever be Michael Jordan. He's great. He's great. Greatest small forward ever. But he would never be MJ.
Yeah, no, he's not.
And I appreciate Dwayne Wade telling the truth.
He's not Michael Jordan. This did not surprise me because Dwayne Wade plays in Chicago. So, first of all, as you just made the case, Stephen A., Jordan was better than LeBron anyway. And by the way, kids who love LeBron so much, and you have every reason to, he's an amazingly great player. It's hard to imagine when you're looking at LeBron there was ever a guy better than that. But I'm here to tell you that there absolutely was a guy decisively and clearly better than LeBron James. Let me just tell you that the more advanced the metrics, the more they study it, the more Jordan holds up over LeBron James, even for a career average. Don't forget, LeBron is maybe in slight decline, but he doesn't have like Jordan's Wizards years to factor in yet. And yet, even then, career averages, Jordan better than LeBron by the most sophisticated, advanced metrics. He totally holds up. Now, for those who would say, well, look, the MVP edge goes to LeBron. LeBron has deserved many more than 4 MVPs, and Jordan deserved many more than the 3 that he gotten by that point. Jordan really deserved about 10 MVPs. LeBron probably already deserves 7 or 8 of them. But for those who would say, yeah, well, Jordan is 6 for 6 in the finals, and at this point had 3 finals wins, and LeBron has 3, but LeBron has all those finals losses. Look, LeBron was getting to the finals. Jordan wasn't. Let me just say this again. I've made this case in the past, but I want to be clear about this. Michael Jordan, the first time he played with another All-Star, no one can win a championship without another All-Star. The first time he played with another All-Star was Scottie Pippen's first All-Star year. They took the defending champion Pistons 7 games that year and lost because Pippen couldn't play in Game 7. Now, if you look at the numbers, Pippen was not yet in his prime. It was just his first All-Star appearance. The following year, Pippen entered his prime. His PER jumped to prime levels, for example. At that point, Jordan never didn't win a finals in under 7 games, as Stephen A. points out. They ended the Pistons 4 straight games the very next year. Well, Jordan didn't have to play these great teams. I hear a lot of younger people talking about this, too. Jordan had to play... Okay. Malone, Stockton, Hornacek, a great coach. That's not a great team. What about the season before when the Orlando Magic had won 60 games with a prime Shaq and Penny, and Jordan swept them out the year he came back, swept them out of the playoffs, and followed that up with a win against a Seattle team that won over 60 games. LeBron is amazing. Jordan was better. It's the way it is. Dwayne Wade is acknowledging that. Stephen A., it doesn't surprise me because of where he's playing.
The other thing is, well, he said it before as well. That wasn't the first time he said that about LeBron and Jordan. That was long before he arrived in Chicago. He said that before. Number 2, well, some of these people, they point out that, you know, well, MJ went to 6 finals, but doesn't that mean he lost in earlier rounds? Stephen A's not getting it, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell y'all something. Does everybody remember that when Jordan came into the league, the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers were the stars? You had Larry Bird with McHale and Parrish and Ainge and Henderson and all of these boys. You had Magic with Worthy and Kareem and Rambis and everybody else in L.A., okay? There was a hiccup that, you know, you got the Sixers in '83 prior to that. You got the Pistons interrupting the proceedings. He had to go against stiffer competition. But still in all, he went to 2 consecutive NBA finals before three-peating. So, and that's fourth, like you said. Conference finals, I'm sorry. You got to remember, Pippen, like you said, couldn't play that Game 7 the year before they won their first championship. Then in 1993-94, Jordan was out. That didn't count. 95, he came back with 17 games left in the regular season and had lost to Shaq and them in Orlando because he had only been back for 17 games and then three-peated. So legitimately, if Jordan hadn't left the game of basketball, Jordan would have gone to and possibly won 8 straight NBA championships in an era where you couldn't get called for a foul for passing gas.
You know what you pointed out?
Excuse me.
You know,
it's
and
not
this is the upshot. LeBron sometimes is screwed up, doesn't win the championship. Michael Jordan was the one guy in NBA history. Give him a shot. Just put anything around him. Give him one other All-Star, and he never doesn't win the championship. One other All-Star, and he never doesn't win the championship.
Let's leave it there, gentlemen. Coming up next, Ryan Fitzpatrick with 9 interceptions in 2 games. Is his job on the line this weekend against the Steelers? Mark Schlereth will join us for that combo. Jets fans cannot be happy with the performance of Ryan Fitzpatrick this season. He's already thrown 10 interceptions, 9 in just the last 2 games, resulting in the Jets having a 1-3 record, tied for worst in the AFC East. Fitzpatrick's poor performance is leading many to question if Geno Smith, who hasn't started since 2014, should be given the job back. Hello, Mark Schlereth.
Hello, how are you?
How are we doing?
I'm good.
What do you think? Fitzy's job on the line?
Well, I think your job is always on the line when you don't play well. I mean, obviously, I would look at the Jets as an organization and go, if Geno Smith can't get into a game, after Fitzpatrick has thrown 9 picks in the last 2, how much do you hate Geno Smith? I mean, why is he on your roster? If you can't put him in, if you can't say, hey, Fitzpatrick, listen, man, it's not going your way today. You've thrown 5 picks. You know what? Why don't you come over here, sit on the sideline a little bit. Let's let Geno go ahead and fish this game up. If you can't even make that move at that point, then why is he on your roster? And, oh, by the way, Bryce Petty is hurt. You draft Christian Hackenberg. Have you not developed a quarterback that you feel consistent about or that you feel good enough about to put in a game when your starter is really struggling? I'm not just saying bench him. I'm saying pull him and say, man, listen, man, tough day. It didn't go your way today. But they don't even have the faith in Geno to do that. It really shows you from a personnel department what they're giving Todd Bowles, the head coach, to work with if they don't feel comfortable putting Geno Smith in a game in the last 2 weeks. So my question again would be, why is he on your roster? If you can't stand him that much, why is he even on your roster?
100%. And by the way, Geno Smith didn't get a long-term deal. First, he didn't get the money he wanted, then he didn't get the years he wanted, and there's a reason for that. It's because he hasn't been a very good quarterback throughout his career. He's a competent NFL quarterback, a very good backup, and as a starter, you're probably looking for someone a little bit better. If, you know, he doesn't look like a long-term, never been a long-term answer to anyone's franchise. He's turnover-prone, obviously. 9 interceptions in like a half a second. Yeah, the other guy should be starting. And the thing is, since you don't have long-term plans for Fitzpatrick, since if you lose this week, you're probably not going to make the playoffs, and since at least Geno Smith has shown flashes at times, why wouldn't you start him? It doesn't make any sense. I think absolutely Fitzpatrick's job should be on the line this weekend.
It makes perfect sense why you wouldn't start Geno Smith. Geno Smith is 11-18 as a starter in New York. His QBRs in the 2 seasons that he played was 38-44. Enough said. New York doesn't believe in him. New Yorkers don't want him. Plus, you went out and you drafted Bryce Petty. You drafted this guy Hackenberg out of Penn State. And so the fact of the matter is you've got 3 quarterbacks on your roster where none of them may work for you. I like McCagnon a lot. I'm really fond of him. But these are the kind of questions that have to be answered. Whether it's him, it's Bowles, or both. Something's wrong with that picture when you are looking at a Ryan Fitzpatrick. You got 3 other quarterbacks, and you ain't thinking about playing any of them. Now, in Ryan Fitzpatrick's defense, I will say this. You got the 6 interceptions against Kansas City. Deplorable performance, no doubt about that. But those 3 interceptions he threw last week, I thought were a relative misnomer. One of those interceptions went right through the hands of his receiver. The other one was a desperation heave near the end of the game. So to me, those 2 don't really count. What we really come down to is that Ryan Fitzpatrick had a very, very bad game against Kansas City. I don't think we should be looking at him as his job security at all unless he comes out and stinks up the joint with another 4, 5, 6 interception performance. If barring something like that, I don't see that you have a better option in a Jets uniform at this particular moment in time.
Right, that's why his job's on the line. If he plays poorly, then he should be yanked.
Well, he should be, but if you don't...
But go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, if you have no faith in the guys that you have on your roster, why are they on the roster? Here's the other thing, man, that doesn't get enough attention in this day and age of the National Football League, and this is a big issue. And this is where some franchises set themselves apart and other franchises continue to struggle along the way. It's not just drafting guys. The most important part is developing guys. And it's really hard to do nowadays because you don't get to practice anymore. You don't get the time. You don't get that. So you better have guys on your staff that know how to develop a player and get that player up to speed quickly without that practice time. And, you know, the franchises that are doing it right now, the Denver Broncos have done a great job. New England is always exceptional at this. They draft, but more importantly, they develop. You can't develop a quarterback that you feel comfortable with in 2 weeks when your quarterback has thrown 9 interceptions. You got issues.
And by the way, how do you develop a guy if he never gets out on the field? If he's on your, why is he on your roster? That's the first part, right?
Right.
And secondly, he doesn't get any more experience. He's never on the field. Let's not pretend Geno Smith didn't also have some pretty good games in the NFL. He has.
Right.
And Ryan Fitzpatrick, Stephen A., has been good throughout his entire career for a grand total of 2 seasons. Not great, good for 2 years out of his whole career.
I would ask both of you this, and maybe
what are the good games you're talking about with Geno Smith?
You want me to tell you the dates off the top of my head? Geno Smith, the last time he actually started for the Jets, threw like 3 touchdowns.
Off the top of my head, I've seen him had good moments. It's rare in the day that I saw us on a Monday morning talking about, hey, Geno really, really looked good. He's had good moments, but a good game?
Yes.
Shalera, you know better than me. You recall him having a good game?
Well, listen, I'm sure that he's probably had a decent game. I would never put him in the upper echelon of anything. Here's the one thing that would bother me, and it's bothered me, and you two would know better than I, because you probably heard more than I. But when your quarterback, who at the time was your starting quarterback, gets jacked in the jaw in the locker room in training camp, and I didn't hear one dude on that roster say, like, hey, man, that's a problem. Like, when I didn't hear one guy come to his defense, that says to me, you got a guy in your locker room that people don't respect. And those guys, you can't give an opportunity to start if nobody respects the guy. And I don't know, maybe they did come to his defense, but I didn't hear one guy basically complain about that.
One thing he is in the upper echelon of, Mark, is Jets quarterbacks. He's in the upper echelon of Jets quarterbacks. Geno Smith.
That pretty much says it all right there.
All right, Jets
I don't think so.
at Heinz Field this weekend. Hey, at least they're in New York. Mark, you're sticking around.
First Take is brought to you by Nissan, innovation that excites. And Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
No Adrian Peterson, no problem for a Vikings team that had started 4-0 after an impressive start on defense. The Vikings defense ranks second in the NFL in points per game, sacks, and defensive efficiency. Expect a defensive battle this weekend because they are taking on a Texans team that held their opponents without a passing touchdown for a third straight game last week. Mark, I'll start with you. What do you expect in this one?
Listen, both these defenses are pretty darn good. It's amazing to me the Minnesota Vikings can lose their starting quarterback, their starting running back, and their starting left tackle and actually be better on offense. I think the one thing that Sam Bradford provides for them that not Geno Smith, but Teddy Bridgewater couldn't, is Teddy Bridgewater, and I like Teddy Bridgewater, but Teddy Bridgewater doesn't consistently push the ball down the field. He's not a threat doing that, so teams don't have to defend that. And Sam Bradford can push the ball down the field. He's really accurate. He's played exceptionally well. But this is what I look at. This is where kind of the rubber meets the road. I think the Minnesota's defense is outstanding, and I think that Brock Osweiler is average. And I think they will pressure Brock Osweiler. They will hit Brock Osweiler. And the one thing he has shown me through his 7 starts in Denver and through the first 4 starts of this season, when you get to him, that dude makes bad decisions. He throws the ball away, he throws interceptions, and he takes hits because he holds the ball too long. Against that defense, I think Houston loses.
Only thing I'll add, I like Minnesota. I think they have a different kind. Every couple of years, you see a different kind of defense. I think that's Minnesota and the Broncos. They separated themselves. Losing Adrian Peterson, they don't feel the need for a power running game, and they don't have the kind of blocking anyway for that. McKinnon's kind of elusive and I think is therefore not used as much. And Bradford is better at this point than Bridgewater. So they did get better offensively, too, and I like him in this game.
Stephen A?
This defense against Brock Osweiler, what else is there to talk about?
I tend to agree with you.
It's all about the purple people eaters. All right, we asked you guys earlier in the show if Dak Prescott is getting too much credit for the Cowboys' 3-1 start. The results are in. 62% say no, he is not getting too much credit. How do you feel about that, Mark?
I think he's playing exceptional football. And you know what? This guy's got an old soul about him. He reminds me of Russell Wilson when Russell Wilson came in. Just unflappable. Just like, whatever, man, it's all good. And to watch him not only orchestrate this Scott Linehan offense, to hand it off and to run the ball, to recognize man coverage and scramble and get first downs, and also to watch receivers change routes and not panic about it and be able to put the ball on target down the field. I think he's exceptional, man. He had that rollout play, and I'm going to break it down on NFL Live today, that rollout play for a touchdown last week that was as exceptional a throw as you can make in this league. And that's veteran quarterbacking done by a rookie right there. I think the kid has been phenomenal. They're going to have a decision to make. When Tony Romo comes back, they may not say that's a decision. That's a decision. That's going to be a hard one to make because that kid is playing great.
As a rookie, if you can convert on third downs, I don't care how simple the offense or how they, then you're doing your job, and that's what he's doing. Stephen A. Nothing.
Y'all can feel the way y'all feel. To me, Ezekiel Elliott running for 278 yards over the last 2 games, that offensive line playing the way that it's played, and the defense looking the way that it looks.
See, Ezekiel Elliott gets credit for the offensive line, but somehow you take away credit from Dak. I see what you did.
Defense is looking all right. Bye, everybody. See you Monday.